Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure that you subscribe to Off the Floor. We call it the most heat anywhere. This is where you go to get away from Twitter, get away from the engagement baiting and all that kind of stuff, get the most heat information, conversation, celebration, consternation, repudiation, whatever it is you're looking for. You can find it there. 10 different channels, as well as our stage shows. We're going to start doing sort of a fifth quarter type thing. If you're familiar with what Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, some of these others do, they discuss the show afterwards. So we're going to go on there and talk about our podcast after we complete them. You got to click on the link in the description, bypass the Apple upcharge, pay the $2.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. Also, check out Prize Picks. NBA Finals shows, Stanley Cup Finals shows all week long on Five Reasons YouTube. So not only will you get $50 if you put down five and then you get 50 to play, but then you'll get advice on what exactly you should play. So check it out, prizepicks.com. Use the code FIVE, and yes, it is legal in the state of Florida. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne. Yeah, five on the floor, ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing, you can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Down to Biscayne, kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. The NBA Finals are set. They'll open on Thursday. This is the Southwest Airlines Series. Indiana against Oklahoma City. I think this is going to be good basketball. And yet, I also know that every NBA writer is complaining right now because they want to go to Miami, they want to go to Los Angeles, they want to go anywhere but Indianapolis, where I've spent a lot of time, or Oklahoma City, where you can go back and forth down one street. Brady, we're going to talk about the basketball side of this. And really the theme of this is, do the Pacers have a chance? Because you're looking at some of the early betting lines for this, and it's not the most lopsided. There were some Lakers finals, a couple that I covered in the early 2000s. I think the one against Philadelphia, the one against Indiana, where they were huge, huge, huge favorites with Shaq and Kobe. This is not quite that, but it's in the top 6 or 7 in terms of the longest odds for for a team that's the underdog. And it's again rare in the sense that the team that's the favorite has not won anything yet. So this is not like a dynasty that's coming in. This is like a budding dynasty. This is a franchise that's scaring the league because they have elite young players, the MVP, and then they've got like so many draft picks, including the Heats, by the way, coming up this upcoming June, or actually we're in June or at the end of June. So, but this is not, again, like a Heat team that won 2 championships or a Bulls team that had won 6 titles or any of that. This is an OKC team that, again, has never cashed in. And their previous incarnation of Durant and Westbrook and Harden lost to the Heat, never got back to the finals. And now you have this team, and yet everybody is projecting a walkover. So before we get into the matchups here and whether or not, how the Pacers can exploit certain things, are you expecting a walkover?
A little bit, not a total walkover, but I do think before we get into like certain, matchups, as you said, in different things with the series, I just think OKC's been on kind of a different level, whereas Indiana's been a lot of these games they've kind of squeaked out close games in a lot of these games, and it feels like every OKC game it's just a blowout. It's a double-digit lead no matter what. They have. Look, when we're sitting here talking on a Heat podcast, we have to compare some things to the Heat, but we often talk about Miami, needing an identity, needing a lead guy, but also like specifically the identity of a team where they can lean on a certain direction. They haven't had that in quite some time, whether we say they have a defensive system, they have a defensive coach, they have their lead player as a defensive guy, but they haven't been an elite defense. The offense obviously has been subpar, but you look at a team like OKC, who's like, you watch them and they're like, this behind Shea, they're just so good offensively. They can get a bucket whenever they want. We talked about in a recent episode how they've kind of, ruled over the mid range, where Shea's kind of just takes advantage of that area. They run sprays. But all that aside, they've been the best defense for a large portion of the season. Like, they've been so good on that end. So when you talk about, two of the fastest paced teams in the league, and specifically like the best at scoring and transition consistently, I'm curious to see what OKC does defensively to slow that down, because obviously Indiana hasn't really been slowed down in terms of pace in a while, like over the last 2 years, but OKC has the defenders to be able to do it. And they have guys to control pace. It's why, once again, comparing it to Miami, we talk about so often, one of the biggest issues with this team is they don't have somebody to slow the game down. They don't have somebody, past this Jimmy era, to control the pace of the game. And it's not always about slowing the game down. That's what Miami's been used to, because they've been such a slow paced team and they've been behind Kyle or Jimmy or all these guys. It could be to up pace too. I mean, we're seeing that with these two teams, and it almost seems like that's the direction of the game right now. Like, it's not, as young players are beginning to take over, and this is kind of a young guys league, this game is becoming faster and faster. So you're having to lean into, just a different style. So it seems like it's going to be a running match. I mean, if Indiana continues to shoot 40% from three in the playoffs as they've been, I mean, they're going to have definitely a shot. But OKC just has a certain level of consistency it's just hard to look over.
Yeah, and that is the issue with teams that play with pace. If you know how to play one way, and I had Brian Gelsiler on from SiriusXM NBA, and he discussed this as well. If you know how to play one way like Indiana does, it's hard to just shut that off because the other team may be better at it. So that's going to be a challenge for them. And I don't think that they'll be scared to play on the road in OKC. But the issue with OKC, and we saw this against Miami, and it's hard to compare, anything with Miami because it was such a disjointed team this year. But Miami had a lead on them at one point, and then it was just gone. It was like 26-2 or some kind of a run like that, and that's just what they do. And they've got good players who aren't even playing for them right now, like Aaron Wiggins, etc. And as we get into the matchups here, I think what people are going to learn about OKC is, again, their defense spreads throughout the entire roster. Like, they're
Yeah.
bringing two elite guard defenders off the bench. And that is to follow having two guard defenders in their starting lineup, including arguably their best defender. I mean, it was hard to even make a distinction whether Dort or Caruso should be higher on the list of, defensive guards this year. The only difference, I guess, is that Dort a little more physical maybe than Caruso, but also plays more minutes than Caruso does. But they can just rotate so many guys in and out. So let's get to it. And actually, let's do it on the other side. I want to go through all the matchups with you here and how they can make this competitive. I'm struggling to see a recent series where, the underdog to such a degree, overcame. It required an injury, or injuries actually. Golden State against Toronto, and that Toronto team was better than this Indiana team. I mean, you're starting with Kawhi Leonard. You had Anunoby. You got Pascal Siakam, who's in this series. You had Van Vliet. You had Lowry. That team was better than this team. I mean, you had Norm Powell coming off the bench, and then you take a look at that Golden State team again. You had to have Durant get hurt and Clay get hurt for that thing to turn. I guess you could go back to Detroit against the Lakers back in the mid 2000s, but part of the issue there was, I mean, the Lakers were a mess. They didn't even like each other at that point. And I guess you could say the Heat in 2011 against Dallas, but that required an all-time collapse from LeBron. So there has to be some kind of other force here to lead to an upset in the finals. As we look back at most of these final series, what we think may be an upset really wasn't in retrospect. I have a hard time seeing how, if we'll look back at this, if Indiana wins and say, well, that really wasn't an upset. But I will say this. Indiana's been the second best team in the league over the past 55, 60 games in terms of record, but OKC has been first. All right, before we go forward here, check out Real Estate Shop. RealEstateShopFL.com. Javier and Amanda, they will take care of all your real estate needs, whether you're buying or selling real estate based in Broward County, but they can help you out in Dade as well. We just see them with open houses all over the place in Broward, Pines, all the way to Fort Lauderdale Beach. They're everywhere. So check them out. Real Estate Shop. You want honest, trustworthy. That's what they are. And again, they're family-oriented people. So if you have a family, they will know how to navigate this for you. We got interest rates all over the place these days. And then additionally, dealing with this housing market, which can be a little bit complicated. So check it out. It's realestateshopfl.com or the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on IG. All right, so let's get to some of the matchups here. I am assuming we will not see starting lineup changes, right? So probably Chet, Hartenstein, Chet, Jalen Williams, Dort, and SGA for OKC. And Indiana will be looking at Miles Turner, Siakam, Neesmith, Nemhart, and Halliburton. Correct? That's what you anticipate. Neither team make a major change.
For sure. And it feels like that's one of the one advantages you see off the bat is just both teams have decent defenders, but like OKC's defenders are just like bigger wing defenders. Like they have guys that are able to size up all over the floor, whereas the Pacers, I trust their point of attack stuff a lot more.
So beyond that, all right. So let's take a look at some of the matchups in the front court and how these will integrate, and also who may come off the bench to support. So, are we thinking at the start of the game that Hartenstein probably guards Miles Turner, right? They keep that conventional.
Possibly. I mean, probably they probably do, but I do think they can move things around just because Miles Turner's always on the perimeter, where they could put maybe Chet on him, and then they could probably move things around. Even if they put Miles Turner to cut or Hartenstein to help off one of their guards, they could do that too. So that's what I'm saying. Like OKC, I feel like has such flexibility. Like they have the ability to go to so many different things where it makes it a lot tougher. Like I don't think OKC's really had to make a true adjustment like this entire play. Like they got through Denver and they had to make certain adjustments, not like major ones. Like they played their game all the way through. And I'm still waiting to see if there's a team that makes them have to make a major adjustment to get them off their game. And that's why they've been so impressive is like I said the word consistency earlier, but like they've been themselves all season and all playoffs where they haven't had to change a single thing. And they've, as you said earlier as well, they've been lucky enough not to have any, injury bugs this season.
But to that end, though, okay, so, like we're talking about, okay, how can Indiana break through here? It would seem that Hartenstein's minutes could be somewhat limited because if he is guarding Miles Turner, because I don't think he can guard Siakam, not consistently. So if he's guarding Miles Turner and Miles Turner makes some threes, then that does force some triggers and some adjustments, I would think, from OKC, right? Like, is that? I see. I think Miles Turner is a really important player in this series. I think he's a swing player here. Siakam's going to get his. I think even against OKC, I just think he's so good at getting to his spots at this stage. He's been on this stage, so to speak, before. And we'll talk about the backcourt, and obviously that's what everybody wants to get to. But I just think that Miles Turner can do some things here. And then as we're going to talk about Neesmith, versus I guess it's going to be Jalen Williams is probably going to be his primary assignment. I just feel like Miles Turner has to give them consistent production, but particularly from the perimeter.
100%. It's funny. So before we were talking about this, I was gonna say if I could compare this series to like one from another series, another final series. Honestly, I was thinking that I think this goes kind of like the Denver Miami one. And I know it sounds crazy. I know maybe Indiana, like I'm not giving Indiana enough credit, but I just think when it comes down to it, I think like Miami stole that game 2 in Denver, and it was like, okay, we have a series. I kind of see that where like Indiana gets one in OKC early in the series, and then OKC kind of just coasts the rest of the way and just kind of runs away with it. Yes, they don't have the injuries that Miami had, but the way that they can change that, and this is where I was getting to when you mentioned Miles Turner, is we often in that finals bring up the kind of the role players like 3-point percentage absolutely dipping for Miami. It's a similar state for Indiana. I mean, they're shooting the heck out of the ball right now. They're scoring at such a high level. Yes, they're a much higher powered offense than Miami was at the time. But if their role players show up and can shoot the ball well, like if they have another good series from Neesmith or Nemhard, or their bench shows up. I know Ben Shepherd off their bench has been good for them. Like if they have a guy, or even like you said, Miles Turner, I think it's definitely a big player in this series. They like Halliburton's gonna get his, but it's gonna be tough for him. Like they're really going to take him out of his game as a scorer. I think he'll still impact the game as a passer and everything. He'll still get points, but it's gonna be a lot tougher than these past series. So it's more of a need, it feels like, for their role players. And it just feels like too often when there's like a superior team than the other in the NBA Finals, it always comes down to the shooting. It always comes down to the role players shooting. Same thing with Dallas. I mean, last year it's pretty similar as well. So like they're going to have to need their role players to kind of show up and play at a similar level, because obviously on this type of level, this type of stage, sometimes we see that dip from certain guys.
Well, that's what didn't happen for Miami. So if we're going to make some kind of a comp here, Caleb and Gabe did not have a good series against
Max.
Denver, or Max. None of the three of them, right? So we're talking about, really, for Indiana, you're talking about Neesmith, you're talking about Nembhard. And they may have bigger profiles. They were both drafted, unlike the three guys we're talking about in Miami. But you're talking about Neesmith, you're talking about Nembhard. And then I guess you're talking about a drafted guy off the bench who I do think could be a factor here, which is Mathurin. One interesting side note of this series, 4 Canadian players, which is something. Dort and Mathurin apparently grew up near each other. So there's a lot of connections here. But I feel like he's going to have to score off the bench. Like he had some flourishes against the Knicks, not so much in that last game, but in the 2 prior ones. And it's hard to consider him a role player, and he was a top 10 pick. But I'm just thinking, those 3 guys, Neesmith, Mathurin, they're going to have to find ways to score. I mean, regardless of whether it's shooting or whether it's Mathurin can create a little bit and can finish, they're going to have to find ways to score. Nembhard was not effective offensively in the last series, but if you look at the defensive field goal percentage numbers, he was really good in that regard. So I'm with you on that. But again, I think so much of this is going to come back to what everybody wants to talk about, which is, how does Halliburton get free? And I mean, they're going to put Dort on him, right? Like SGA is gonna float off an Nembhard, right, and play the passing lanes and do that. I don't know. Is Halliburton physical enough to deal with Dort for an entire series? That's what worries me.
Yeah, it's going to be taxing. That's what it's going to take him out of his game. It's going to be. You mentioned kind of Mathurin, I think, is probably the X factor for Indiana for sure. Like undoubtedly, just because you need shot creation against a team like this. Like you need somebody that can just create for themselves isolation off the dribble, and he's kind of that guy. He's the guy that can kind of open up the game. It's really hard to see I keep saying Miami, Indiana, like running Halliburton, Turner pick and rolls like they're to win these games in this series. Like they make it so tough on you to be able to run those pick and pops. Like you said, they get around screens, are able to be physical with Halliburton, do all that stuff. They're going to have to find other ways. And one of those other ways is trying to turn OKC over and run the floor. And like I said, I don't see either team not playing their game. I don't really, even as good as OKC's been defensively, I still see Indiana playing their game. Like they have not gotten taken out of it. So like the hit ahead passes, the playing fast, all of that stuff, I still think is going to be important. And here's the most important thing of the series, Ethan. We didn't mention this. It's road to a Thomas Bryant, ring here. Like that's the main goal here.
Will he play?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's found minutes.
Well, he outplayed Tony Bradley in the last series, right? So if Carlisle decides to play, I can see him getting some minutes against Hartenstein. The thing is with Hartenstein is that he doesn't really come back. He plays kind of 20 for them, like he's important for them. Let me pivot to this. The Thomas Bryant thing. Look, I'm happy for him. Look, he was a good teammate in Miami. You had to clear the way for Ware. He provided some amusing moments with some of his overconfidence on the court, and so we appreciate those, because there weren't a lot of funny moments during the Heat season, at least that we could laugh with instead of laugh at, although I guess that was a little bit laugh at. But let's get to OKC and what the weakness is here. Because defensively, they don't have any. They really don't. Like they are, and it's kind of a frightening prospect for the league. And I actually think the best thing that can happen is for OKC to win the title, even though they're going to gain confidence going forward. Because if they don't win the title and they decide to deal 6 of their draft picks for Giannis, then we're cooked for a decade. Okay, but I don't know what their weakness is defensively, but I feel like their shooting, could get them in trouble on the other side. I mean, SG is going to get his 30 to 32. He just does. He'll get to his spots. It's like clockwork. Okay. And he could average more than that in this series, but I don't think he's going to need to. But I just wonder, like, their shooting comes and goes with some of their other players, with Wallace, with Dort, with some of the, I mean, even with Chet to a certain degree, with Jalen Williams has had some pop games and then has had some other games that have not been great, where he doesn't even take a lot of perimeter shots. Is that it? I mean, it's just, you hope they don't shoot the ball well, right?
100%. I mean, Caruso as well is a guy teams will help off of. Shea is not even taking that many threes. I mean, yes, he's a good 3-point shooter, but he's not taking a bunch of them. Like, he plays his game. So 100%. Just to give some context here as well, I just thought this was funny when I looked. I was looking at the Thunder's 3-point percentage in the playoffs. They're shooting 34%. The Heat were shooting 35% in the playoffs
Yeah.
from three. So they actually shot better from three than the Thunder are
Give him the
shooting right now.
title. That's right.
Yeah, it might as well see how many quarters they won. But also, like, it just feels like it hasn't mattered. But it feels like a team like Indiana, when they are such a high-powered offense, has the ability to push them. Has the Thunder faced an offense like
No.
Indiana? I mean, they haven't. I mean,
Denver's was not
Denver's
as high
yeah,
octane this year, but they did have to deal with an elite offensive player. I mean, once Gordon got hurt,
yeah.
it kind of took him out of it. And Michael Porter Jr. was a disaster, so they really couldn't go to him. I think to me, if Indiana's going to win this series, I mentioned Mathurin as an X factor, but honestly, if Indiana's going to win this series, Siakam's the MVP.
100%.
Right,
I agree.
because it's not going to be Halliburton. I just don't see it. They just got too many guards to throw at him. But with Siakam, I would assume Jalen Williams will try to be physical with him when he guards him. I don't like Chet's matchup against him. I don't. I think to me Pascal is the guy if it's going to be on them. If it's going to be Shea if it's OKC. But I just feel like Siakam is the one guy who, as his performance, if he has a 30-point game in there, I think that's the game Indiana wins. I feel like this is a 5-game series. I'd like it to be more. I think the basketball is going to be entertaining for actually true basketball fans. I think the two coaches are a good matchup. I'm not as familiar with Daniel as maybe some because we don't see them on national TV all that often. I've watched him, but I don't know his tendencies. But Rick Carlisle, you kind of know. Like, I mean, he's adjusted to different teams. We obviously saw him beat the Heat back in 11. I've seen him with Detroit, this Indiana group, and he will adjust. He will make changes to his rotation. He will bench guys you don't think he's going to bench. I saw Jarace Walker is going to miss the first 2 games. He wasn't really in the rotation now anyway. That's the first round pick from 13. From 23. Do you see this going beyond 5?
Possibly. I mean, it's definitely a 5 or 6. Like I said, I in my head, I kind of see this going exactly like the Miami-Denver series where they win one
Yeah.
early and then they kind of take it on from there. Maybe they steal one more and it does go 6, but yeah, this does feel like OKC series. It just feels like they have the advantages. They're rolling. They have the confidence. They have the player. Like, as much as we talk
Yeah.
about Halliburton or Siakam being that guy, they're not Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. So, like,
Right.
yeah, like it just feels like this is their series to win. And I just wonder, like, for a long period of time, it was always like this, the Eastern Conference team was this team. Like, it was like the West
Mm-hmm.
beating up on each other. And then it was like, okay, well, the
Mm-hmm.
team got unscathed in the East. Well, now it's kind of seems like the tides are turning a little bit where the East teams are beating up on each other a little bit. And then the OKC kind of just walked into the finals pretty cleanly. So I don't think that's going to be a trend moving forward, though, obviously. Like,
Right.
it seems like everything's trending West and they're going to be getting, beginning to get younger in the West and start beating up on each other. That's why there's such an opportunity in the East. But for now, right now, yeah, that's the way this is going. And like you said, the scariest thing of them all is OKC has the ability to cash them in. And I don't think they are. Like, I honestly, even if they lost, I don't think they would. I just feel like they're in a spot right now where, I mean, it is tough. It depends how the West shakes out. If Giannis goes West or if stuff
Mhm.
like that, or KD moves teams or stuff like that, maybe it forces their hand. But they're not in a position where they're like forced to do anything. Like, they're like in a great
Right.
spot as a franchise to make decisions. So credit to them. Like, this is turned around pretty quickly.
Well, they have paid some luxury tax, but not a lot over the years, and this is going to get real expensive. And as they start to get into that second apron, it's going to be more expensive, and they're going to have less to work with. But for right now, yeah, they're really well positioned. I saw someone did a study on this that showed that if they kept the current core together, don't break it up, that they would essentially only pay tax one of the next 5 years. So they'd have or have a second apron. Excuse me, they pay tax, but they'd have one second apron year over the next 5 years. So that would limit their flexibility a little bit. But that's if it's just this core. And what's crazy about this series to me is it's the Paul George series. Both of these teams traded Paul George to get additional assets, especially OKC. He'll podcast on it, I'm sure. But the other thing is, it's also the Victor Oladipo series. Vic played for both of these teams, and he's attempting a comeback. So I guess the Heat could bring him back if they want to win a
Depot
title.
Day,
He's
Part
trying to come
7.
back. Depot Day Part 7. I'll take it, man. Just bring Dwayne back for good time's sake too. We'll have a Dwayne Wade reunion day. And Michael Beasley. That would be time number 6. Alex will be front row for that one. I like OKC in 5. I wish I could pick a different outcome. I do think the games are going to be interesting. And I just think OKC ultimately, Indiana's going to need to get baskets at the end of games, and I just don't think they're going to be able to get them when they really need them at the end of games. And here's the thing, they can't fall behind like they did against the Knicks at times, because they'll be wiped off the floor. Like, the Knicks weren't going to run away from you like this team will run away from you. And then we'll start to have discussions. If Durant, Westbrook, Harden couldn't cash in a championship, we'll see how many this organization can. All right, Brady, appreciate it. Thanks for popping on. We will have coverage of these games. We'll be on playback during this series, and also Prize Picks. Use that code FIVE. Have a good one.